What's up, everybody? Welcome back. John Levesque here. Today, I'm joined by my friend, Lisa Crosbie. Lisa, how you doing?
I am doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's election week here in America, trying to wait for all of this chaos to unfold so we can find out who our supreme leader will be for the next 4 years.
And we're going to distract you from that for a little bit by talking about chatbots instead.
That's a great
And this will be a
thing.
non-political chatbot, just so that we can get into a happy zone for a little while here, I think.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so Lisa, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody? Take a minute, talk about you. What do you do? Where are you from? What do you like? All that good stuff. And then go ahead and feel free to jump right into what it is you are teaching today.
Awesome. So, yes, my name is Lisa Crosbie. How did I do there with my slide?
Great.
I am in Australia, in case you can't tell from my accent, and I will make sure I speak at a speed that works across the divide there. You'll find me on all of these various places on the socials. I have a job which is a technology evangelist for Barhead Solutions here in Australia, and which basically is a technical marketing job. So I get to do heaps of demos, and I run Power Apps training and all sorts of cool stuff, get people excited about the platform. I also do a little podcast with my friend Megan Walker, who you might have come across in the community as well, called the Up Podcast. And yeah, I have a lot of fun with this technology. I actually made a career change into tech about 4 years ago. I spent a very long time working in book publishing. I'm a qualified librarian. So this is a kind of like a midlife career change into this stuff for me, and I'm having enormous fun with it.
You spent time in book publishing.
I did. Educational book publishing, textbooks and things. So never touched a manuscript. I've actually done more editing in my time in tech because the communication skills is a superpower here, right? So
very cool.
Yeah, I worked in book publishing for a very long time. That was my first career. So I've got to do books and tech. Very lucky.
I love it. I had no idea. We got to chat.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so what are you showing us today?
All right, I am going to show you some Power Virtual Agent stuff. Let me switch across because I prefer to do demos than PowerPoints. So yeah, I'm going to show you entities and slot filling. So this is actually one of my favorite things around chatbots. I've just told you I came out of a background working with books. I worked with languages. So we're actually going to have a look at some of the natural language processing features that come with the bot that make it easier to have a really natural conversation.
Awesome.
So I have my bot Marvin. Do you know Marvin? Do you know my reference?
I do not know Marvin.
Oh,
no.
John, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Okay.
Not a sci-fi fan.
I do know Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but
Marvin, the kind of the bot, the robot in there he's always a little bit down. Perhaps not the uplift we need right now, but anyway, there's my cultural sci-fi reference in there for you, just for a bit of fun. So what we're going to do is go through the concept of what entities are, and then we'll build out a little bot here, and I'll take you through it. So cool. Most people, when they're working with chatbots and all the intro demo videos and stuff you see, go straight into topics, and we will come back to that. But let's just jump in here and have a look at what's going on. So now, the thing you've got to be aware of, if you know Common Data Service or if you work with any database stuff, this is not the same use of the word entities that you're familiar with there. So over there, we're building entities, meaning tables, database tables. This is now entities in the sense of the text analytics sense of the word. So what this is about is taking unstructured text and finding structured pieces of information within it. So these are the ones that come with the bot as it stands out of the box. It can recognize these types of things in the text. So for instance, colors. If I type, I have a red car, it can recognize the word red in that sentence, regardless of what text is surrounding it. So the concept of a text analytics entity is about extracting those pieces of structured information from unstructured text. So that's the core concept of what we're looking at here.
I laugh at this because Microsoft and naming conventions, man.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Do you know what the entities thing does my head in? And I see the Common Data Service stuff is starting to switch across to the word tables is being used now, which I'm actually delighted about, because if you use these things together, there's a point at which in the click path, the word entities appears twice to mean two completely different
Oh
things.
man, that's
So
tough.
I'm
Yeah.
actually delighted, because entities mean something very different in text analytics than it does in database world, and it's a little confusing for people. So yeah, this is the other entity.
Well, it's like this I almost would say these are, when I look at this list, like this is characteristics,
Yes.
really, right?
Yep.
In the for the most of them, right? There's a few that I don't know if they fit characteristics, but I would say for the most part, that's probably the simplest way to say, like, you know, red or an age or a language, or, you know, lots of characteristics.
Exactly right. And so these are all, you know, if you use any of the other text analytics stuff, this is drawing on the same, you know, the same thing going on in the Azure Cognitive Services. So you might have come across this, you know, in those other areas. But yeah, so if we have a look into one of those, like color is relatively easy to follow. But something like, let's have a look at, for instance, number. It's able to, so it gives you some examples here of what this can do. So you can see it can actually pick a number out of the text, even if you're typing it in words or with actual numbers as well. So it can pull those things out. If we have a look at, for instance, city is one. So this one actually can pull out different cities. Now this one actually now does go globally. Some of the other things are just for the US, and it calls out where those things are there. So if you're like me, not in the US, some of these things are a little bit kind of geographically constrained still. Date and time, so it can pick out things like next Friday, tomorrow, if you put a date in there and so on. So it can actually pull those things out of the text. So the way that the reason that entities matter when we're looking at a chatbot is this is the thing that makes it a more natural conversation with the bot, because the bot has this ability to understand and look for the pieces of information in a natural conversation that it's trying to find. So that's why this matters here, and how we're gonna use it.
Cool. Okay.
All right, now I've got one here that I've half pre-prepared that we'll come back to. You might see that one sticks out a little bit, because you can actually create a custom entity as well. So I'm just giving you a little sneak peek there. we'll come back to that one as well, because the concept here is that these are standard things that you might want to extract from the conversation, like the date, the city, the age, the money, numbers, those kinds of things. But if you're working in a particular industry, domain, whatever, you might want the bot to be able to extract specific things from the conversation that are about your particular use case, your particular industry, and that's a custom entity where you can put that in and teach the bot the language of your particular use case or your particular industry as well.
Cool. So I could do one about beer, and I could teach it the difference
between a
pint and a liter, right?
Yes,
this is a very important distinction.
We could throw that one in there. We've got the important stuff happening now.
That's right.
Awesome. All right, so should we build this thing?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So I'm going to go back into topics, which is the same place we always start. And I'm going to be a little bit lazy here about not bothering to set up all of my trigger phrases, because I want to focus on what happens with these entities in the conversation. So I'm just going to put in send flowers. So I'm going to pretend that we are going through a conversation here where it's a chatbot asking the person who's using the chatbot to ask to organize a flower delivery or find out what kind of flowers they can have delivered. So it has a nice scenario that takes us through a what, where, when type of conversation. I can show you how the entities work, but I'm going to be a little bit deliberately lazy there and just stick one trigger phrase in. Obviously, you should be doing 5 to 10 diverse phrases to do this properly.
It's a demo.
But we'll shortcut that if that's okay.
It is perfectly.
All right, let's do this. So again, I'm going to be a little bit lazy with my message, because I want to get straight to the action part here, which is about ask a question. Now, where we go through and sort of say the bot needs to ask a question, there's lots of things around that sort of show you how to use, you say, is there a multiple choice option, and you do that, or is it a yes, no, and you can have a conditional branching. But if I click through into here and have a look, do you recognize all these things that we just looked at? Age, city, color, continent, all of those entities are sitting in there. So we can actually tell the bot, find these things in the conversation, instead of saying multiple choice options that I choose. So let's say, for instance, who do you want to send them to? And one of the things that you can identify in here, so we can search this, is a person's name. So now it's looking for in the text something that it recognizes a person's name. I'm just going to give this variable a name. So it's going to store that information when it finds it in the text in that variable for the person's name. So we're just going to go through what would be realistically a fairly stilted kind of conversation, and then I'm going to show you how the entities enable you to have a natural conversation out of what looks like a stilted conversation here. So we'll say, who do you want to send them to? Say, where are you sending them? And this time the bot is going to be looking for a city in its response. So again, we'll just call that one city. What else might we like to know? Ask a question. Let's say, when do you want them delivered? And this time we can look for a date. So remember when we looked at the entity for date, that was allowing us to put in things like next Monday or an actual calendar date. Oops, we should just, it's a whole lot easier when I show you where the variables land, if I've given them names that make sense.
Totally.
Now I'm going to spell color my way.
Yeah, the proper
what color
way.
do you want? The proper way.
That's right.
But I do fully accept that the pre-built entity here uses the uses that spelling.
It's funny. I looked this up recently, and
Yeah.
Apparently both are acceptable. I don't know how one word has two acceptable spellings in the same language, but hey.
Yeah. See, I'm also my first degree was actually linguistics, and linguistics is actually all about observing language, not dictating it. So I'm actually totally fine that there are two variations, but I'm going to use the one that I prefer.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
All right. So we've got who are you sending them to? Where are you sending them? What color would you like? How about let's pop one more thing in here, which is how much do you want to spend?
Oh.
All right. And this time we're going to look for an entity called money. So this one allows you to find monetary values in there. All right. Fairly dull conversation.
I mean,
but let's play with it and see what happens, right?
It would be pretty much back and forth with a bot, right? Something you expect from a bot, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's just go through that. Now, I don't know if you've seen this before, but you can watch the variables as they come through. So this is also why I was giving them nice clear names, because as we test our bot on the side here, you can watch the variables. I just popped that little variable watch button out there. And then as it understands an answer that populates each variable, it's going to show it to us in there.
Thank you for pointing that out. Actually, that was something I recently learned about, and I thought that was just awesome.
It's actually really cool. And if you want to test it, and especially with what I'm doing here, because if you're doing just one variable or you have a multiple choice, you can generally see where it's going in the topic path, and you don't necessarily need to see that. But I'm going to play with this in a way that this little box becomes our best friend today.
Cool.
So I'm going to do my trigger topic, which was the very creative send flowers, just so that we kick the thing off. So where do you want to send them to? So I'm just going to go through this stage just to sort of, show you how it works. So we can say, let's send them to Redmond, pop a city in there, and it will recognize that and populate the city variable as we would expect. Now I have accidentally demonstrated.
Yeah, you answered wrong.
I answered the wrong question.
Understood. Yeah.
Let's pretend I did that totally on purpose.
What do you mean? Because I thought it was.
I was going to do that on purpose next, so I've stolen my own punchline now.
That's awesome.
But here's what happened, right? Because it knows in that conversation thread, because I've told it, hey, Marvin, you are looking for these particular types of information. It goes, well, that's a city, and I know that I'm looking for a city, even though that's not the question I asked.
Nice.
So let's try again. I'll send some flowers to you. When do you want them delivered? So we can say tomorrow, and it will actually bring up the date that is at the time we're doing this, tomorrow. So it's put the date in there.
Nice.
What color do you want? Red. How much do you want to spend? $50. All good. Now, the other thing I should put in here, just to make it a little bit easier for us to see this working, I'm just going to add a message at the end that shows all of the variables. So we'll say, let's send flowers to, and we can pull in, it's sort of nice just to get that confirmation at the end. So let's send flowers to person name in and the city.
You could even put the color before the word flowers.
Good suggestion. Let's do that. Let's put flowers to person name in city.
Yeah, that's the one caveat.
They will
once you
cost. Yeah, once you start
start
clicking in the
putting
wrong
variables,
spot.
you got to use your mouse or your arrows.
I've got to use
around.
the keyboard there. Exactly. Yeah. They will cost this much money and will be delivered on the date. All right. So first thing I want to show you, apart from the thing I just did show you about how we can skip variables here, is that it can extract the information out of a whole lot of other junk. So again, let's go with send flowers. And who do you want to send them to? We'll make this one easy. And I can say he lives in Redmond. Right. So instead of this time, I haven't just said, like last time, what I did is I gave the bot easy one-word answers.
Yep.
But this is cleverer, right? Because I can put in whatever. So same thing with, and this is something other bots don't necessarily do, because if you say, for instance, what's your email address? And I type, my email address is Lisa.Crosbie, whatever, it can recognize the email address string in there. Same with this, he lives in, that's completely irrelevant information to the bot, but the bot is just like, I'm looking for a city. I know I'm looking for a city and I understand what a city is. And I found it, and there it is. When do you want them delivered? So what did I do last time? I said tomorrow. So let's put in an actual date in here. So we can actually put in a forward date, so it understands tomorrow, it understands a date. Now, the other thing with the colors here is that the color entity is designed to pick out sort of primary colors. So it's not doing the full range of particular, variations on colors. You could create a custom color entity if you had a use case where it mattered. So let's say his favorite, I'm just presuming all sorts of things about you here, John. His favorite color, and I'm spelling favorite and color with yous. His favorite color is violet, right? So now I'm giving it too much information, but I'm also using a color that isn't a standard primary, it's not actual artistic primary colors, but not a major color, but it understands that violet is a synonym of purple. So it's defined that as purple. So this idea of, I've put in a full sentence, I've used a word that isn't one of the categories that it knows, but it knows the synonym and it can put that in there. And we'll just sort of show that we can put a number in there as well. And we're good to go. I didn't do so well on my spaces there, did I?
Yeah, that's all right.
That's all right. We get the idea, indeed. All right. So now let's have some fun with this. Let's reset this.
Okay.
Are we good with the concept here? It's so
totally.
it's able to pull those things out, even though I give it other junk around it.
Well, and so it's funny because, like, as someone who comes from Power Automate, right?
Yeah.
My tendency is to over-engineer every response. Like, my first bot that I created, I was creating every condition. I was telling it what to say down every path. I was guiding it across every conversation, right? And it's funny because as I watched some of the community videos, I was like, oh, wow, I'm doing this all wrong. This is not a flow. This is completely different.
Exactly.
You have to trust, you got to trust that this thing actually understands the words.
Yes, it does. It does.
And so to see it like this, where you can actually, like, you're trying to mess with it, like violet, right? And it knows it's purple.
And it knows that, right?
Yeah. Crazy.
So now let's say in my trigger topic here, we can say, I want to send flowers to John in Redmond.
Oh, wow. And then it just skips.
It has completely skipped those questions now.
Yeah.
So even in the trigger phrase, it knows, send flowers is my trigger, so it's found this topic, but then it knows that you can, and this is where this little thing, as I said, this becomes really super important for us to get visibility on what's going on here. It's picked up those things.
Man.
So again, this is where I would have demonstrated that I could answer a question out of order.
Hey, you know what?
But hey, we did that.
We gave away the punchline a little early.
We gave away the
worked.
punchline. Yeah, look, I'll just do it again. So if I say, what color do you want? $50, you know, so again, if the person isn't paying attention, you know, we can do all of those things. So then, you know, all of these things, you can start to play around with it. And this is where, you know, you do have to be a little bit careful, because if I say, for instance, I want to send orange flowers, orange is actually also a geographical place, and it actually fills a couple of different slots. So, you know, you do also have to have some common sense. Let me just show you what happens then. So see, that breaks it. So you do have to be a little bit careful, because it's actually then being a bit clever for its own good, because it's recognizing a color and a city in that as well, and it does something strange with the person's name. Yeah. So, you know, like where I'm showing this, I'm being pretty casual about building it out with all of these questions in a row and so on. But you need to think through if you've got ambiguities that it's picking up, which is why you want to do this kind of testing as well there.
So then, real quick, let me ask you this: would you recommend breaking up each question into its own topic, to then you could gather these variables the same way, but then you wouldn't run into those discrepancies where
I don't think you'd want to trigger a topic every time. I think, you know, I think if you're asking this many questions, and you might want to be aware of those potential things, the confirmation message at the end would be the point to say, is this correct? Where you can go, hang on, no, bot, you've got it wrong. And I think you'd still want to treat an exception as an exception. Like, that's a pretty exceptional situation.
That is a crazy one. Yeah,
but I just
feel like I gotta show the team.
You do actually have to think through the implications of what you're doing, and that some of those entities are where there are words that are used for both with no context. That's something to think through. So I might have a bit more of a play about how to do that, but, you know, I wouldn't be creating different topics for everything. I think it's just, you know, in your particular scenario, what would happen there. So then I could also go, I have $50 and I want to send flowers to, I'm going to say red flowers. So you can sort of muck around with it and see all of these things come up again, and then it will go through and it will ask me the other questions and skip them and so on. So it is, isn't it?
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. Every time I see it, I'm amazed. Like, just again, from that Power Automate background where everything is prescriptive, right? I must build everything exactly how I want it to behave, to trade over to this experience where it really is so smart. It's really, it does the Lewis behind it, language understanding. And if people aren't familiar with that, you can look up that technology. I'm amazed at how much they iterate on that language processing, how far they've come.
Oh, it has come very far. So I said, you know, my degree in linguistics was a long time ago, and at the time that idea of natural language understanding or whatever was a very kind of far away in the future for only hardcore engineering types, which wasn't me. And it's a joy to me to come back into this and go, I can use this now without being an engineer to build it, and to see, especially in the last, I think it's only in the last couple of years that just that like exponential kind of capability in parity with human language understanding is just really getting close. So that's as this has been an interest area of mine for a long time, and it comes back around from my old world into my new career. So I get very excited to see this stuff working like this, and like it is accessible to anyone. I didn't build anything here. I've put in a bunch of questions and chosen some options. You know,
I mean, if somebody wanted to see how the transformation of language processing has taken place in the last 2 years. I did a video with a friend of mine, Kent Weir, and we did a similar thing. Now, this product didn't exist as we know it, and we had to use Q&A Maker and natural language processing and Power Automate, all done in Azure. And it was strong then. The way it could understand things was pretty strong 2 years ago, we thought. But now if someone were to compare that video to this video, the
Oh, yes.
difference is insane.
Yeah, and I've sat in on some sessions with the text analytics people who do this, like completely out of context of Power Virtual Agents. But those sessions, I've been lucky enough to hear some of the engineers in that text analytics area speak, and yeah, it is absolutely, you know, huge kind of progress in that area in the last couple of years, which is amazing. And this is all the same stuff under the hood. So, like I said before, if you're working with cognitive services and you're working with text analytics and so on, it's exactly the same thing. If you look at the documentation, the entities are the same. So this is just drawing down into all of that technology underneath. But I didn't have to Azure anything here.
It's giving you a beautiful
it's there for me to
layer.
use. Yeah, it's there for me to use without needing the skill set to understand how to build all of that. So one more thing, which I alluded to at the start here, is this idea of a custom entity. So you know, all of that's well and good, but for instance, I've done an example of this. I had a client that works in sort of like tapware and bathroom type stuff. And of course, their standard colors are not standard colors. They work with things like brushed chrome and matte black and things like that. So we do you can do a custom color entity for those things. If we're working on flowers here, we might want to say, well, we want it to be able to pick out the name of a type of flower from that conversation in the same way that it can identify a color or a city. This is what matters to us. And you can actually add in here, you can add synonyms in here as well. Now this is where I'm going to, you know, sort of go with, I am absolutely not an expert on flowers, but if you had something like, for instance, daffodils, so this is just adding a list of things to what I want it to identify as flowers. You can actually go in here and enter a synonym, and I'm going to go with jonquil and probably get in trouble with anyone who really knows their flowers. But let's say in the way that violet moves to purple, as a florist, perhaps we don't have jonquils, but we understand that to be, this is the same sort of type of flower or whatever. So we can add, you know, we can add synonyms and things in there so that it does that same thing we just saw with the violet purple. And you define that how you want. Smart matching, you want to have that on, because you'll see here, this helps match misspellings, grammar variations, words with similar meanings. So again, you're creating your custom entity with your language, but it's also drawing on the ability to do that kind of fuzzy, slightly fuzzy matching and other synonym matching that's known to it as well.
Cool.
Then we can bring that one back in. So, you know, we've got that classic sort of multiple choice type scenarios. If I go back into my send flowers topic here and author that, we can add what kind of flowers do you want. So we might pop that in as the start here and say what kind. And then you can, instead of multiple choice options here, I can bring up my flowers entity and either have just that or select options from there. So we could put, for instance, we might say, oh gee, you know, roses and daisies and orchids are the most common ones, and I'm just going to put those ones in there. So you could say choose from the list or type your selection. So you can start to kind of bring that in as a different kind of multiple choice option in there as well, or you can just have it sitting in there as something else that the bot understands that is particular to your domain.
Cool.
Let's give that I won't bother putting it in the confirmation message, but just so that we can see that one working as well. So there we go, we've got that list in here. And if I say, for instance, what did I say, jonquil? Pop out our variables and you'll see there it's done that thing of understanding. So I didn't even choose one from the list, but I used a word and it did that synonym and it understood and it classified it in the flower type. So all of the same things we're just looking at, but the ability to put in your own kind of domain knowledge and language in there as well.
Man,
so, and this part is called slot filling as well. So that's the other concept we're looking at here, entities and slot filling, where it's able to recognize, yes, I've got the answer to that slot, therefore I can skip that question. So there you go.
Cool. I love
awesome,
this.
Right?
I love this.
It's fun to play with.
Yeah.
Can I, you know.
Well, it's like you can make the experience so much more personal this way,
sure.
I feel like, you know?
Yeah. And this is where, when we talk about natural conversational AI, that's what this is. Like that's, you know, we see it with the topics as well, where you're putting in those trigger phrases, and it's using that kind of natural language understanding to identify which topic based on what the user types, even though it's not an exact match, which is something you couldn't have done, you know, a few years back. This is the other part of it as well, in that ability to have a very natural kind of conversation. So you can actually give the bot everything, you know, everything up front. I want to send flowers to John in Redmond. He likes red roses, and I want them. Let's see, shall we do it?
Let's try it. Yeah, let's check it out.
I want to send flowers to John in Redmond. He likes red roses. I want them delivered tomorrow, and I want to spend $50. Boom.
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 Yes. Oh, I held my breath. Right? I held my breath. I was like, yes.
You might have caught, I did a little copy paste there, but I actually had the wrong thing in my clipboard because I had actually pre-typed it.
Oh, that's
I'll have
funny.
to type it again.
Nice.
But yeah, so there you go. So that, like, again, you imagine that bot experience instead of where we started with the when, where, boring. Yeah. This is how you might explain. If you might pick up the phone and say, you might say all of those things, and the bot is able to handle all that and extract it. And then, of course, we can bring your friend Power Automate in at this point to go away and place an order or search for something or whatever. But we've got all those information in variables and pass it across.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My goodness, this was sexy. I think so. It really is. It's just such a sexy technology. Like it just works, you know. It's when I think citizen development experience, this is it, right? The ease in which you just put together a full experience, this is a real chatbot that understands exactly what you're saying. Look, you just gave it a wall of text and it disseminated all that information perfectly.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Oh. It's crazy, isn't it? Right. And this is this thing. Structured information from unstructured text is what that technology is doing. Yes. It's awesome. I love it.
And so I'm going to add to this real quick, just because I want everyone to know two things. One, this experience you can deploy in Microsoft Teams, and it's absolutely free. It's included.
And it's exactly the same. You could do all of this.
All of this, exactly. The experience is the same, and it will cost you $0. So when you go look at the pricing for Power Virtual Agents, don't be deterred. Just start working in Teams. And then when you find that the experience is valuable, if you feel you need to change over to a premium license, do it then. But if you're getting all the functionality in Teams, use it for free. Get all you can out of it. That's one.
That's in Teams is awesome, And the experience is, it looks exactly the same as this, but this whole window from everything from the teal section down is just, it just has the Teams window, pieces around it. But then the experience of what I've just done here is exactly the same. You can do all of that stuff.
Now, the second thing I want to point out that a lot of people also don't know, if you are going to connect a flow to your Power Virtual Agent, there is a very particular way that you should do that. And Lisa, I'm not sure if you even know about this. So when you click that plus sign right there and you click call in action, and then that menu comes up right there, and there's going to be an option, create a flow right there. Now, every time that you're going to create a flow for Power Virtual Agents, I want you to do it from that place. Okay. And there's a very particular reason why that is. It's not because of the ease of use, but that is one reason. It just takes you right to the experience. You can create it and then plug it in. But no, more important, there's a licensing implication here. When you create a flow from that spot, rather than going over to Power Automate and creating it first and then connecting it in, when you create it straight from the Power Virtual Agents experience, that flow has an additional 15,000 API calls per day that draw from your Power Virtual Agents licensing rather than your Power Automate licensing. So
that is a very important thing to know. I think that also starts to, when we're talking about the licensing and so on, getting that extra Power Automate stuff included, makes a big difference to what you are paying for and what you're getting.
Exactly. And so a lot of people don't know. And so they build the flows ahead of time in their main account, and they draw these virtual agent flows from the 10,000 API calls they get from their developer account. Instead, you develop it here in line in the virtual agent experience, and that virtual agent has 15,000 API calls of its own that do not draw from your personal developer account. And so that is a massive important thing to know. And that's why we always build our flows that connect into our virtual agents from there. We never pre-build them in Power Automate and connect them after. Super.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I will also point out while we're here, look at this lovely, easy to use way of now creating the flow. It's got the inputs and the outputs, and I can go in and bring them in there. That wasn't always the way it was. So if you're looking at any tutorials that were done a year ago, like when it was brand new, this is all like HTTP calls and stuff, which again, for people who come from a no code background go, no, this now is fully no code, much easier. It's just inputs, outputs, those things. That was sort of more recently done than when Power Virtual Agents was first released. So just again, I always say to people when they're learning this stuff, check anything that's more than about 3 months old, just double check that there's new improved things all the time, and this experience of building that flow from within Power Agents and getting this nice no code input output experience it wasn't always there. So don't go down the rabbit warren of the HTTP connector unless you're choosing to do that for a valid reason. This makes it easier now. You don't have to.
Totally. Man, oh my gosh, this was so good.
Oh, we'll look at a couple of bonus topics at the end there.
Yeah. Everybody needs to know when you're building virtual agents, you got to know those two things.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Man, Lisa, thank you so much for being here and sharing this with us. This has been fantastic.
My pleasure. It's fun. Thank you so much for having me on. We've talked about doing this for a while. It's great to finally do it.
Definitely. And for those of you guys at home, check the description, get connected with Lisa. There'll be her Twitter down there. She's got all kinds of links that I will link to. Lisa, I heard a little birdie tell me.
There's my stuff.
Boom, there it is. Okay, that's what we missed at the beginning.
I did, yes. There we go. That's where you'll find me.
Yes.
Feel free to connect with me on any of those socials, and that's where you'll find me.
Yes, all those links will be down in the description, so you can click on them. You don't have to type them. Again, Lisa, thank you for being here. For you guys at home, smash that like button so you know that Lisa, because this was awesome, let her know what a great job she did. Get subscribed so that you don't miss another video. That's it from me. I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks. Bye.